chosen one. Heaven froze to watch you. Everything around you may have looked ordinary, even silent. But in the unseen realms, the skies trembled, angels stood still, and darkness blinked. There was a moment, perhaps just one gesture, one sacrifice, one decision that you thought was small, but it shattered something in the spiritual atmosphere. The heavens could not ignore it. That moment caused a divine pause. You are not like the rest. You never have been. That one act you made, perhaps in silence, perhaps through tears echoed, louder than 1,000 loud praises. You didn't do it for recognition. You didn't do it for a reward. You did it because something in you is aligned with heaven. Even when you don't understand it, God saw it. It was not missed. You didn't see the shift in the atmosphere, but the realm of angels did. Demons that were assigned to confuse you took one step back. Why? Because in that one moment, you chose righteousness over convenience. You chose truth over fitting in. You chose obedience. Even when it cost you. That decision, hidden to man, was visible to the throne room. And God, his heart melted. The creator of galaxies, the ancient of days, was moved. He watched you struggle, watched the war in your soul. And when you chose the narrow road, he leaned in. You thought it was just another day, but heaven marked it as a turning point. Scripture says in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." What you unleashed was not just peace, it was purpose. That one act launched a sequence of divine motion. Things are moving now on your behalf. Doors that were welded shut are trembling. Relationships that were dead are being stirred. Assignments that belong to others are now falling into your hands. Because one act of obedience rewrote a timeline and chosen one. This is only the beginning. Do you know how rare you are? Most would have chosen the easy way. Most would have caved under the pressure. But you, even when your voice was shaking, even when your heart was breaking, you stood. You stood on truth. You stood in love. You stood on the edge of darkness and refused to fall. And all of heaven took notice. This isn't motivational fluff. This is spiritual fact. Something real was triggered the moment you obeyed. That one act, whether a decision to walk away from sin, to bless someone in secret, to forgive someone who crushed you, to say yes when everything in you wanted to say no carried weight in eternity. Let me speak prophetically. You have no idea what you just set in motion. Because of that one decision, heaven released scrolls, assignments, mantles. The enemy had plans for this season, but your obedience burned his blueprints. You didn't just choose right. You unlocked something ancient, something holy, something royal. And no, this isn't about works. This isn't about perfection. This is about alignment. You aligned your will with heaven's. You came into agreement with God's voice, not your feelings. You silenced the opinions of others to obey a whisper in your soul. And that is the kind of obedience that makes demons tremble and angels move. Beloved chosen one, there is nothing common about you. You were never meant to blend in. That ache in your heart, that sensitivity in your spirit, it's because you're designed to carry fire, divine fire. And now that fire has been stirred again, you didn't just obey, You shook the foundations of what was planned against you. You shortened the wilderness. You sped up the timeline. Because when you move in obedience, heaven accelerates. That moment was not lost. That tear you cried, it watered a seed. That secret you surrendered, it was seen. That heartbreak you handed back to God without bitterness, it was an offering more fragrant than 1,000 worship songs. You've made history in heaven. The scroll of your life has another line now. A line written in the ink of faithfulness. This is not a metaphor. This is what the realm of spirit has recorded. You thought it was a delay. You thought God wasn't watching. But heaven was leaning in the entire time. That moment you thought no one would see changed everything. This is your confirmation. That act didn't go unnoticed. That moment shifted things. You're walking in a new season now. Everything is different, whether you feel it yet or not. So type it now. Speak it prophetically. Declare in the comments, 888. Seal it with that number of new beginnings and divine alignment. You are aligned. You are moving. You are chosen. And yes, God saw. You didn't even know what you did. You didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't accompanied by fireworks or angelic trumpets. There was no applause from those around you. But in the spirit, it was as if the heavens parted for a moment. You had no idea that your quiet, hidden obedience sent a ripple across eternity. Because while others see moments, God sees motives. Others look at outcomes. But God inspects the heart. That single act, maybe it was forgiving someone who never apologized. Maybe it was giving when you barely had enough. Maybe it was saying yes to something you didn't even fully understand. But your spirit knew it was right. That act struck the very chords of heaven. And no, you didn't feel anything supernatural in that moment. You weren't expecting reward. But this is why it mattered so much. You did it simply because it was right. Not because it was convenient. Not because it benefited you. You did it because the voice of God, soft, persistent, nudged you forward. And you answered. That's why it melted his heart. You didn't bargain with him. You didn't demand proof before obedience. You didn't ask for comfort in exchange for sacrifice. You simply stepped out in trust. It might have been a whisper to your soul, a moment you almost brushed off, but you listened. You obeyed. And because of that, something was released, though you had no idea. You see, in heaven's eyes, obedience is greater than drama. Integrity speaks louder than performance. And trust. Trust moves mountains in the spirit. You didn't need to scream. You didn't need to be seen. All you needed to do was move when God said move. And you did. That one yes might have cost you sleep. It may have distanced you from people who didn't understand. It may have stripped you of comfort. But in that moment, you aligned yourself with divine order. And that alignment was louder than any shout in the spiritual world. It wasn't about the size of the act, it was about the size of your surrender. In a time when many are following feelings, you chose faith. While others chase convenience, you chose covenant. And that choice came from a place so deep within you. Even you didn't realize how powerful it was. It flowed out of a part of you that has been shaped through fire, refined through rejection, built in wilderness. And that's exactly why it carried so much weight. You see, God remembers what you've been through. He remembers the seasons when you felt abandoned, when you cried alone, when no one saw you. He remembers the crushing, the losses, the betrayals. And when you still chose obedience after all that, it wasn't just obedience, it was worship. Pure, rough, unfiltered worship. No one saw it, but God did. And not just God, hell saw it too. Demons that have monitored your life, waiting for the moment you'd break, had to step back when you made that choice. They were watching, whispering lies, trying to push you off course. But you didn't flinch. You stood. That wasn't weakness. That was power under control. That was heaven-infused courage. You had every excuse to walk away, every reason to quit. But you chose light. You chose God. And even if you didn't know the impact of that moment, all of creation felt the shift. Do you understand what it means to move the heart of God? Not with performance, not with perfection, but with trust. It means you've gone beyond religious motion and stepped into divine intimacy. It means your voice is known in heaven not because you're loud, but because you're real. It means you are not a servant, merely following rules. You are a child, trusted with the mysteries of the kingdom. And because of that one act, heaven has recorded your name differently. You didn't do it for recognition, but now you are recognized. You didn't do it for reward, but now reward is being released. Quietly, faithfully, surely, not in flashy ways, but in irreversible ones. Foundations have shifted. Appointments are aligning. Battles are being won in rooms you'll never see because your one act set the war in motion. And no, this isn't about bragging rights. This is about divine reality. When you walk in obedience without needing applause, God responds in a way man cannot manufacture. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff. They comfort me." You walked through shadows and still said yes. That's why this moment matters. That's why your future will look nothing like your past. You've triggered a shift you didn't even mean to simply by doing the right thing when no one was watching. And now, something has been set in motion that cannot be undone. The sacrifice that shook the dark. You still don't understand the magnitude of what you did, because while it felt like surrender, it was actually warfare. While it looked like weakness, it was victory in its purest form. That quiet decision, that hidden sacrifice, chosen one, it did not just please heaven, it terrified hell. Because darkness thrives in secrecy, in patterns, in generational wounds passed down like chains. But what you did, though, you may have felt small broke, something ancient. You weren't just obeying God, you were defying darkness. You were dismantling a system the enemy hoped would trap you forever. Somewhere in your bloodline, pain had repeated itself for generations. Cycles of addiction, betrayal, silence, spiritual apathy. You were never meant to survive it. The enemy didn't just fight you for who you are, he fought you for who you came from. And yet, with one hidden act of faith, you shattered what others could not even see. Let this truth settle into your bones. You didn't just overcome a moment, you overcame a history. That decision you made may be to walk away, to forgive, to choose holiness, to let go of bitterness. It wasn't just your obedience, it was your declaration. A line was drawn in the spirit. It stops with me. You may not have said those words, But the spirit realm heard them, and it shook. Chains don't always break with sound. Sometimes they snap in silence, under the weight of surrender. And when that happened, angels moved. A generational curse trembled. A monitoring spirit that had been assigned to your bloodline fled. The enemy that thought he had legal access to your life suddenly lost his case in the court of heaven. Why? Because one act of sacrifice realigned your blood with righteousness. You didn't know it then, but your obedience was bigger than your moment. It reached backward through time and forward into destiny. It covered your past, shielded your present, and opened your future, because you chose what was holy, even when it hurt. The reason you felt pressure, it's not because you're weak, it's because your yes held weight. That heaviness you felt wasn't random. It was resistance from spiritual forces that could see what was about to break. They hoped to exhaust you before you chose right. But you did. And now the darkness is panicking. You didn't just obey. You disrupted. You didn't just say yes to God. You said no to every demonic plan written against your name. And what you unleashed, chosen one, cannot be undone. You may not have seen the smoke. You may not have felt the quake. But in the realm of the spirit, something fell. Something ancient. Something territorial. Something that thought you'd never rise. You see, the enemy knew your potential more clearly than you did. That's why the attacks were so fierce. That's why the temptation came dressed as comfort. That's why compromise was so well packaged. But you saw through it. You didn't need all the answers. You just needed one thing, a heart that said yes to God, no matter the cost. And now, the cost is turning into glory. You're not just walking in obedience. You're walking in authority. A kind of authority hell hoped you'd never touch. The kind that doesn't come from titles or platforms. The kind that comes from pain, surrendered, wounds offered, pride crucified. Real power unshakable and unseen as just started flowing through you. We find in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. You can, because you did. You did what most won't. You didn't wait to feel strong. You moved while weak. And that's why heaven is moving for you now. The shift has started. The oil is flowing. The gates are trembling. And it all started with one obedient act you didn't even realize would go this far. Type this in the comments now. It ends now. Let that be your declaration, not just against the enemy, but to every old mindset, every inherited fear, every quiet lie that said you'd never be free. Declare it boldly. You may have done it in silence, but now let the spirit realm hear your voice. It ends now, because it has. Every curse that whispered, you'll never be more than this, it ends now. Every cycle of sabotage, every agreement with unworthiness, every compromise passed down like a legacy, it ends now. You are not just surviving, you are severing. When you type those words, you are not writing a comment, you are writing a verdict. You are agreeing with heaven that the chains have fallen, the patterns have shattered. The old you, the bound you, the fearful you's over. Hell hoped you would stay quiet, but your voice has become a sword. Speak it now. Write it in faith. Echo it in the atmosphere. It ends now, marked by mercy in secret. There are things you've done that no one clapped for, acts of quiet compassion, Moments when you gave what you couldn't afford to give, whether it was your time, your attention, your kindness, your forgiveness. No one saw the war. You fought to stay soft in a world that tried to harden you. But heaven did. And you've been marked, not by man, not by titles, not by public applause, but by mercy. There are records in heaven with your name on them, written not in ink, but in tears, sweat, and unspoken surrender. You didn't post about it. You didn't parade it. You didn't tell the world. But the one who sees in secret remembered, because that's how God works. He doesn't reward performance. He rewards posture. And your posture has been one of quiet endurance, of choosing grace when judgment would have been easier, of taking the narrow road while the wide path mocked you from a distance. Chosen one. You didn't just survive the battle, you protected your heart during it. That's what set you apart. Not just that you endured, but that you endured well. That you held on to faith when bitterness came knocking. That you protected your purity while being surrounded by compromise. That you still believed in goodness even when you were surrounded by betrayal. And all of that has been seen. You've been marked by mercy. Not because you earned it, but because you honored it. You understood something others missed, that to be forgiven much means to love much. And you, with all your flaws and missteps, chose to be a vessel of that same mercy. You didn't just receive grace, you gave it away. You didn't just ask for healing, you became a safe place for others to heal, even while you were still bleeding. And that's what moved heaven. Mercy marks those who give it when it's least deserved. It wraps itself around those who protect others' reputations even after they themselves have been wounded. It clings to the ones who hold their tongue when they have every reason to speak. That's what you did. And that's why you now carry something others do not. There is a seal on your life, unseen by human eyes, but feared by darkness. A seal that says, "This one belongs to mercy. This one chose forgiveness over revenge. This one broke the cycle of retaliation. This one chose peace." That's not weakness, that's authority. Because only those who've been broken deeply can carry mercy purely. And now, you do. Maybe no one thanked you for it. Maybe the people you forgave never even knew they were forgiven. Maybe you gave when no one returned the favor. That's why it carries weight. You didn't give to be seen. You gave because you're marked. You gave because something in your DNA has been rewritten. You are not the product of your pain. You are the proof that heaven rewrites stories. And mercy isn't just something you carry, it's something that surrounds you now. It's building a hedge around your destiny. It's standing between you and the accusations of the enemy. It's speaking for you in places you haven't even stepped into yet. Mercy is not just a feeling, it is a shield, a banner, a force that rewrites consequences. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 42, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. You've hoped, quietly, patiently, sometimes with tears, sometimes with silence, but always with trust. And that's why your strength is coming back. That's why you will soar. Because mercy didn't just mark you to survive, it marked you to rise. Chosen one. You've been trusted with a weight others couldn't carry. But now you're about to walk in favor. Others can't explain. And they won't understand why doors open for you. Why peace follows you. Why breakthrough chases you down. But you will know. It's because you were marked when no one was watching. It's because you showed mercy while your heart was breaking. It's because you sowed peace in a battlefield. And heaven never forgot. In fact, what heaven remembers, hell cannot erase. And now that remembrance is being transformed into reward, not just for you, but for those connected to you. You are a gate opener, a cycle breaker, a vessel through whom divine reversal flows. What you carried quietly is about to be confirmed publicly. What you protected in secret is about to be honored in plain sight. The time is coming when those who questioned your quietness will witness your rising, and when they ask how it happened, all you'll be able to say is, "Mercy marked me, not talent, not striving, just obedience and the God who never forgets." The scroll of remembrance opened. There's a moment in the courts of heaven when God leans forward, gestures with his hand, and a scroll is brought before him. Not just any scroll, your scroll, the record of your life, not the surface story others see, but the deeper layers, the quiet victories, the secret sacrifices, the silent obedience that no one but he witnessed. And when that one act you made came before him, the scroll was opened. Heaven doesn't forget what you do in secret. It doesn't dismiss what you did simply because it wasn't seen by crowds or praised by platforms. The spiritual realm doesn't work by likes, views, or followers. It works by legacy. And your legacy was altered when you obeyed in that one hidden moment. A record was written. Angels were dispatched. Assignments were initiated. And most of all, a remembrance was marked. There are moments in life that shift your atmosphere, but then there are moments that shift your identity. That one act, it did both. You became remembered in heaven in a new way. Not that God ever forgot you, no. Never, but there's a difference between being loved and being entrusted. And that moment of obedience moved you from affection into appointment. God saw, and God responded. There's a passage in Scripture where it speaks of a book of remembrance, a book for those who feared the Lord and honored his namano in public ways. But in private faithfulness, do you understand what that means? Chosen one? It means that the same God who formed galaxies also takes notes on the quiet faith of the forgotten. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind." That verse wasn't written for the confident. It was written for the chosen who feel conflicted, those who move forward, even when fear grips their steps. Just like you, that moment when you acted in love, when you walked in truth, when you resisted fear, that is what God remembered. And now, a scroll has opened. Heaven is not static. It's alive with movement, rhythm, warfare, and celebration. And in this very moment, even if you can't see it yet, heaven is still responding to what you've already done. It's not just that something shifted on earth, it's that you shifted dimensions in the spirit. You stepped into a timeline where your obedience begins speaking louder than your past. You're not just enduring anymore. You're now advancing. And because of this shift, because of this scroll, favor is following you. But not just any favor, the kind that builds legacy, not vanity, the kind that opens doors for purpose, not popularity, the kind that blesses your hands so that what you build will bless generations. So listen carefully. As this scroll unrolls, Be mindful of how you walk. Walk humbly. You're not just favored, you're remembered. You've been trusted with impact. Your life is not small. It carries weight, influence, the ability to break open spiritual doors for others. And when heaven sees a person it can trust, it moves on their behalf in ways others can't explain. That's you. Right now, you're reading this not by accident, not by algorithm, but by divine interception. And if this word is confirming something inside your soul, something you've felt stirring, something you couldn't quite put into words, it means your scroll is being read right now in the heavenly realm. You are walking in the evidence of remembrance. If this resonates in your spirit, let it bear fruit. Tap like right now, not for vanity, but to push this word deeper into the algorithm, so more chosen ones are awakened. Share this message with someone who's been suffering silently. They need to know God remembers what man forgets. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel, not just to follow, but to stay under a consistent flow of prophetic fire. There are more words coming that are tied to your next level. Stay connected. If God places it on your heart to sow into this word, we invite you to do so. Your giving helps sustain this flow, expand this reach, and continue the mission of calling out the remnant. Every offering is sacred. Every seed sown in obedience multiplies in unseen ways. But this isn't pressure, it's invitation. Ask the Holy Spirit. If He leads, respond. If not, know this truth. Your obedience already moved heaven, and that is priceless. Because when the scroll was opened, God didn't just see what you did, He saw why you did it. And that is why the blessings coming won't make sense to others. Because they're not a reward for being seen, they're a response to being remembered. Comment 444. Something was unleashed. Chosen one. You thought you were just obeying a nudge. You thought it was just a quiet act of surrender. But what you did shook something far greater than you realize. That moment, that hidden decision, it didn't just move heaven. It tore through something in the unseen. A veil ripped. A realm opened. A cycle broke. You didn't see the wind shift, but it did. You didn't hear the roar in the spirit, but the darkness did. You may have walked away from that moment thinking nothing had changed, but the enemy knows something was lost, and heaven knows something was released. Because obedience is never still. It activates. Obedience is a spiritual trigger that detonates events in both heaven and earth. When you acted out of love, out of faith, out of trust, it unlocked a sequence, not an emotional wave, not a passing thought. No, what you unleashed was a divine sequence, a domino of destiny that has now begun to unfold. And here's the part you must understand. It cannot be stopped. There are some things God does slowly, but there are others He sets into motion the moment faith touches obedience. And your faith has done just that. You started a fire not of destruction, but of awakening. You may have been silent, but the spirit world felt it like a shout. Everything around you is shifting. Doors are beginning to tremble under the weight of divine pressure. What has been closed to you access? Clarity. Relationships. Provision is being revisited by angelic authority. Assignments that were postponed are now being stamped. Release now. Why? Because heaven has found in you what it rarely finds in the earth. A surrendered vessel, hidden but holy. You didn't do this to get anything. but you're about to receive what no striving could ever earn. The moment you moved in obedience, you came into agreement with heaven's rhythm. You synchronized with the voice of God. And when that happens, the natural must yield to the supernatural. The timelines shift. The terrain rearranges. And the promise begins to overtake the delay. We find in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 22, "The least of you will become 1,000, the smallest, a mighty nation. I am the Lord. In its time, I will do this swiftly." And swiftly, suddenly, supernaturally, that's the kind of release that has now been activated over your life. And no, you won't be able to take credit for it. That's the beauty of this kind of unleashing. It doesn't reflect your strength. It reflects God's memory. He remembers your yes. He remembers your surrender. And now, He is responding. Chosen one. This is no longer a passive season. You're walking in a live chain reaction. Every day now will begin to carry prophetic weight. Conversations that seemed random will start to unlock doors. People you forgot will reappear with answers. Situations you buried will begin to sprout fruit. You are not being ignored. You are being accelerated. But don't mistake acceleration for chaos. God is not rushing. He is releasing. You are not running ahead. You are finally in step with a timeline that was waiting for your alignment. This isn't random breakthrough. This is prophetic movement. And it was triggered by your obedience, yes. Your obedience when you thought it wasn't big enough to matter. Let this sink deep. Obedience is not measured by appearance. It is measured by impact. That moment where you laid down your pride. That night you chose to forgive. That time you helped someone without telling anyone. That hour you spent praying when you didn't hear anything back. All of that added weight to your spirit. And now your spirit is heavy with authority. You are not just surviving anymore. You are shaping. You are changing atmospheres simply by showing up. The ripple has become a wave. The tremor has become a quake. And all of it began with one surrender. Type this now in the comments. 444. Let it be a prophetic seal. A number of foundation and divine establishment. God is building something unshakable in your life. What you started by faith is now being reinforced by grace. You may not see the full picture yet, but the blueprint has been activated. The angels assigned to this move have already been released. 444 is not just a number. It's a signpost. It says, heaven has moved. Earth must follow. Don't doubt what you've set in motion. You didn't just say yes to God. You said yes to everything connected to Him, and that means everything connected to you must now come into order. Your house, your future, your purpose, your peace. It has begun. Your crown shifted in that moment. Not visibly, not with fanfare. There was no trumpet, no throne, no royal robe descending from the sky. But in the spiritual realm, something was placed on your head that wasn't there before. A shift took place, sacred, undeniable. Your authority was elevated. Your mantle was increased. You didn't see it happen, but the atmosphere around you did, because crowns in the kingdom are not given when people celebrate you. They're given when you choose obedience in the dark. When you take the low road while others fight for status, when you keep your heart pure even when your name is dragged, that's when heaven moves. And in that momentous, that hidden moment, your spirit was crowned. It wasn't gold and jewels. It was glory and weight. A crown not made by human hands. but woven from the fibers of surrender. You didn't earn it, you aligned with it. And when your heart chose obedience, that crown descended quietly and rested on your life. That's why the resistance increased. You've probably wondered why the warfare intensified right after you did the right thing. Why things felt heavier after your surrender, not lighter. Why confusion seemed to follow clarity. That's because your spiritual rank changed. And with it came new attention from the realm of darkness. Demons are not afraid of noise. They're afraid of holiness. They tremble not when you speak louder, but when your spirit grows heavier, and your spirit became heavier the moment you obeyed. You didn't just obey a command, you stepped into a new dimension of purpose. This is why you're feeling different. It's not just emotion. You're wearing something now. Something in the unseen world sees you differently. You've been elevated not in ego, but in assignment. You've been given access to new levels of spiritual responsibility. Your authority was tested in secret. Now it is known in heaven. This is why favor is starting to follow you differently. This is why people are being drawn to you and can't explain why. This is why certain spaces you used to fit in now feel tight, almost irritating. That's the shift. That's the weight of the crown. It doesn't always feel majestic. Sometimes it feels like pressure. But don't confuse pressure with punishment. It's confirmation. Heaven does not place crowns on the heads of the perfect. It places crowns on the heads of the obedient. And now that you've passed a test in secret, God is preparing to trust you in public. But hear this, the crown doesn't make you better. It makes you more accountable. You've been given something, not to show, but to steward. Your decisions from here matter more, not because you're under surveillance, but because you're under purpose. The higher you go, the clearer your vision must become. The less you can afford distraction, the more you must stay connected to the presence of God. And still, this is not a burden, it's a privilege. To be trusted with spiritual weight, to be allowed to carry something from heaven, to be marked as one who can bear a portion of God's heart. That's an honor beyond words. You were not chosen because you're the strongest. You were chosen because you said yes when it would have been easier to say no. The prophet Elijah spoke, as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. You didn't waver. You followed. And in doing so, you stepped into royal territory. The crown isn't for applause. It's for impact. It gives you the authority to speak peace into chaos, to pray over others and watch chains fall, to walk into situations and shift the atmosphere without even opening your mouth. That's what you carry now. That's why things are changing. And though others may not see it yet, heaven already has. The enemy already has. And God, your Father, already knows his chosen one has stepped into their next level. So walk like it, speak like it, decide like it. You carry something eternal now, and no one can take from you what heaven has placed on you. That crown didn't come from popularity, so it cannot be removed by rejection. It wasn't placed by man, so no man can strip it from your head. And yes, you will be misunderstood. Those close to you may not recognize the shift. Some will treat you like you're still in the last season, but you're not. You've been anointed in secret like David, crowned before you're celebrated, chosen before you're visible. That's how God does it. Quiet authority, hidden elevation. But soon, What was hidden will break open. And when it does, it won't be for your glory, it'll be for His. Because this crown doesn't shout fame. It whispers assignment. And your assignment has just begun. Warfare you never saw was broken, chosen one. You have no idea how many battles were raging around you while you were simply trying to survive your day. The sleepless nights, the sudden anxiety, the heaviness that came out of nowhere, those weren't just emotional storms. Those were spiritual confrontations. Attacks assigned not because of where you've been, but because of where you were headed. The enemy didn't wait for you to arrive before launching the war. He saw the light you carry, the calling marked over your life, and he tried to take you out before the crown could touch your head. But he failed, because of one act of obedience. What was meant to follow you stopped. You were supposed to carry the same torment your family did, the same patterns, the same addictions, the same silence, the same fear. You were supposed to break, just like they did. But something broke instead in the realm you couldn't see. That one decision you made, though it looked like a small choice, caused angels to rise and chains to fall. The demons that tormented your bloodline recognized the shift before you did. You didn't just resist temptation, you resisted inheritance. You resisted spiritual baggage that tried to pretend it was personality. And because of that, something ancient lost its grip. This is why your process felt so long. You were fighting battles without knowing their names. You were wrestling in prayer with things that didn't start with you. You were weeping over burdens that didn't begin in your lifetime. That's what happens when God raises a breaker in the bloodline. The pain increases, but so does the authority. You've been fighting not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. That's what spiritual warfare often looks like. Not fireballs and visions, but confusion that lingers, patterns that repeat, sudden fatigue that has no source. It shows up in the natural, but it begins in the spirit. And when you chose obedience, you gave heaven permission to intervene. You opened the legal right for angels to war on your behalf. There were curses following your name, assignments against your mind, strongholds waiting to be passed down like inheritance. But one obedient step shut them down. Understand this clearly. What you did in faith didn't just invite blessings, it revoked demonic contracts. The enemy thrives on agreement, and for generations, certain spirits were given access through sin, through trauma, through repeated rebellion. But when you stood your ground, when you said yes to God even through shaking hands and a trembling heart, you broke the agreement. And when the agreement breaks, so does the authority. You didn't just close a door, you shattered the hinges. What tried to follow you into this season has no passport anymore. It's been denied by grace, denied by blood, denied by your obedience. This is why you've felt a strange calm lately, or a strange tension. Both are signs. The calm is the peace of God, settling into places where demons once whispered. The tension is the irritation of spirits that no longer have access, but are hoping you'll open the door again. But you won't, because now you know what you carry. Now you understand what was broken, and now you are no longer reacting. You are discerning. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 91, verse 7, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. That's not poetry. That's protection. There is a hedge around you now, not because you are perfect, but because you are positioned. You've chosen light. You've chosen obedience. And the result is not just favor, it's covering. Chosen one. You are walking in the aftermath of a war you never saw, but you felt it. Every sleepless night, every unexplained burden, every time your soul groaned without words. That was warfare. And now you're walking in the residue of the victory heaven won on your behalf. So breathe. You're not under attack, you're under assignment. You're not battling what was, you're building what will be. The darkness tried to track you into this season, but God rewrote your coordinates. You've stepped out of the battlefield and into the building site. And nothing, absolutely nothing that was meant to destroy you will follow you forward. Because this time, the break was final. The curse was not just delayed, it was dismantled. You're not living on borrowed grace. You're living on fulfilled promise. The blood still speaks. The obedience still echoes. And the gates of hell cannot trace your steps anymore. Your obedience birthed new authority. There's a shift in your life that didn't come from striving, fasting, or shouting. It came the moment you chose to obey, when everything in your flesh screamed not to. That kind of obedience is rare. It doesn't just make heaven rejoice, it makes hell retreat. And what you carry now, it's not just freedom, it's authority. You see, when you obey God in secret, you gain access to power in the unseen. Not the kind that announces itself with lightning, but the kind that changes rooms just by your presence. That's where you are now. You carry something you didn't carry before, and those around you may not understand it. But in the spirit, it's already been acknowledged, because obedience is the currency of heaven. That small yes you whispered to God, it authorized angelic movement. That time you resisted bitterness, it gave heaven legal permission to silence demonic voices assigned to your name. That time you said no to something that looked good but wasn't God. It activated protection that will follow you for years. You didn't just obey, you took ground. And that's why the enemy has been trying to make you question your decision ever since. Because he knows what you now carry. He can see the authority that's forming around you like a mantle. Every time you open your mouth, something shifts. Every time you pray, something breaks. Not because you're loud, but because your obedience gave you spiritual weight. The ones with true authority don't have to prove it. They walk in it. Chosen one. This is why certain people have begun to pull away. They feel the shift, but don't know how to describe it. You're not arrogant. You're not distant. You're just wearing something they can't understand. And that's okay. When God increases your authority, He often adjusts your surroundings. You're not just being isolated. You're being enthroned. This doesn't mean you're above. Other sit means you're now seated in a place that carries responsibility. The throne in the kingdom isn't for show, it's for service. And now you've been assigned new spiritual territory. Your presence is disrupting darkness. That's not just a poetic phrase. It's reality. The enemy used to feel comfortable around your life. He doesn't anymore. Because obedience changes your sound. Your prayers carry a new weight. Your silence speaks with fire. Your words, when aligned with God, strike like swords. Scripture says in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 19, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions, and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. You are not weak. You're walking in a strength that doesn't come from personality. It comes from posture, and that posture is obedience. You've been faithful when no one noticed. You've said yes when it hurt. You've stayed soft when bitterness would have made more sense. And now, your spirit has leveled up. What used to intimidate you now flees. What used to confuse you is now being exposed. And what once felt too heavy to carry you now hold with grace. Because you were faithful with little, now you've been entrusted with more. That more won't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like influence you didn't chase, peace that makes no sense, favor that outruns logic, authority that's felt more than spoken. Chosen one, you are dangerous to the darkness now. This is why clarity is increasing, why discernment is sharper, why your words land differently. Because God has placed weight on your spirit, and this weight is not a burden, it's a sign that what was once just warfare is now rulership. So speak differently, walk differently, think differently. You are no longer a slave to the past, you are a steward of power. And though it cost you, it crowned you. Though it broke you, it built you. Though it stretched you, it sent you. Now, type this in the comments. He wept for me. End of. Yes, he wept. The God of all creation. Moved not by fear or failure, but by your faithfulness. When you obeyed in pain, when you gave in secret, when you walked away from what you wanted for what was holy, his heart was stirred. You didn't just make a decision, you touched eternity. And heaven responded with tears of mercy and motion. This isn't symbolic, it's sacred. The same God who wept at Lazarus' tomb, who was moved by the widow's offering, who felt the touch of the woman with the issue of blood, that same God wept over you. Not because you were broken, but because you were brave. Because you gave him your yes when it would have been easier to say no. Because you kept walking when you had every excuse to quit. His tears weren't of sadness, they were of honor, of divine compassion, of holy reverence for the purity of your surrender. Let those words rise like incense. He wept for me. Because when no one else saw the cost, God did. You were tested. You passed. It may not have felt like a test at the time. There were no instructions, no countdown, no warning, just a moment. A decisión. A divine setup that looked like an inconvenience, a disappointment, a heartbreak. But it wasn't random, it was allowed, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. God was proving something through you, not because he doubted you, but because he already knew what you carried. And now, so does heaven, so does hell, and so do you. You passed a test that most don't even recognize, the kind of test that doesn't come with applause, but alignment. That doesn't promote you on a platform, but elevates you in the spirit. You passed because you chose obedience over comfort. You passed because you chose holiness when compromise felt easier. You passed because you remained faithful when no one else was watching. And now everything is shifting. Because when heaven confirms that someone can be trusted, the atmosphere around their life begins to respond. The resistance you once felt so heavy starts to loosen. The confusion starts to clear. The provision begins to flow. The reason isn't because you got stronger. The reason is because you became trusted. There's a moment in every chosen one's life where they stop being tested and start being positioned. That moment, beloved, is now. We find in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. You've been through trial, not just externally, but internally. The war within, the fight to stay faithful when everything screamed for you to break. And yet, you remained. You endured. You stayed. That is spiritual strength. That is faith that heaven honors. And now the crown is not a future promise, it's a present release. So what do you do when you pass the test? You build. You don't go back to old patterns. You don't shrink to old mindsets. You don't keep explaining yourself to people who weren't meant to walk with you in this new season. You build from this elevation. You carry the weight of this new authority. You speak differently. You give differently. You serve differently. Because now you know God can trust you in the fire. And if he can trust you in the fire, he can trust you with the future. Chosen one. What you walked through didn't weaken you. It clarified you. It burned off the excess. It purified your motives. And now, your next steps aren't just steps, they are statements. Each one carries more weight. Each one echoes the fact that you didn't bow, you didn't run, you didn't fold. And that is exactly why heaven is now releasing new access over your life. This message found you for a reason, not because of coincidence, not because of timing, but because you're standing at the edge of release. Don't scroll past this moment, pause. Let the Spirit confirm what you already sense. You are in the beginning of your reward season. If this word has pierced something deep in you, let it breathe. Tap like, not as a gesture of agreement, but as a declaration of spiritual alignment. Yes, this is for me. Yes, I recognize what's happening. Yes, I passed. Share this with someone who's been in the fire, someone who's been silent, but faithful. They need to hear this. The test wasn't punishment. It was preparation. And they're not behind. They're about to be accelerated. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, not to follow a voice, but to stay connected to a prophetic frequency. This isn't just content, it's confirmation. And more is coming that will speak directly to your next steps. If you feel led, consider sowing into this word, not out of pressure, but out of agreement. If God has used this space to speak to you, to confirm something in your spirit, to remind you that your pain wasn't wasted, then respond as the Spirit leads. Every offering, large or small, helps us keep releasing truth like this to those who are still waiting for their confirmation moment. You are not just one of many. You are one set apart. And this word, this is heaven's whisper to you. You were tested, and you passed. Now walk boldly into everything the test unlocked. The fire didn't destroy you. It revealed you. And now, the real building begins. The kind of building that doesn't just bless you, builds legacy. The kind that rewrites bloodlines, restores ruins, and redeems time. Every scar now becomes strategy. Every tear now becomes oil. You are no longer surviving the storm, you are leading others out of it. Demons fled. Angels stood still. It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It wasn't even something you expected to be spiritual. But in that moment of quiet obedience, the realm of the Spirit paused. Something ancient, dark, and territorial was forced to let go. And the angels who had been walking with you did not need to move. They simply stood still and watched. Because when authority is activated, heaven doesn't rush, it reigns. You see, not all victories are loud. Some are sacred. Some are marked not by celebration, but by silence. The kind of silence where the enemy loses access without warning, and the angels simply nod in honor. That's what happened when you obeyed. That's what happened when you made that one decision, the one no one applauded, the one no one saw. Demons don't tremble at church attendance. They tremble at obedience. Your surrender spoke louder than warfare. You didn't rebuke anything. You just realigned. And when that happened, everything assigned to torment, delay, and derail, you had to leave. Not because you shouted at it, but because you no longer agreed with it. That's how spiritual contracts are broken by agreement. The enemy only has authority where he finds agreement. He thrives on legal ground and patterns, unconfessed bitterness, willful sin, emotional alliances with lies. But when you said yes to God, you said no to the enemy. You closed doors you didn't even know were open. You renounced more than you realized, and darkness had to flee. You may have felt it as sudden peace, or as tears you didn't expect, or as a lifting in your chest you couldn't explain. What you felt was something leaving, and it wasn't emotional. It was spiritual. It was real. Because obedience disrupte démonique rhythm. It cancels familiar spirits. It severs unseen chains. And as that happened, heaven didn't panic. It didn't rush to your aid. It stood still. Why? Because what you did was enough. You activated your authority. You didn't just survive, you legislated. You shifted from needing deliverance to walking in dominion. And when someone walks in dominion, the angels don't need to war, they wait. They encamp. They surround. They protect what already belongs to the righteous. It is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 7, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them." That's your reality now. You're not being stalked by fear, you're being surrounded by glory. You're not waiting for God to come through, he's already there, encamped around you. You may not always feel the presence, but you will see the fruit. You'll begin to notice divine patterns, conversations opening doors, timing working in your favor, strategies coming in dreams, burdens lifting unexpectedly. That's not coincidence. That's angelic presence. That's what stillness in heaven looks like. It means the war has already been won. And yet, you still carry humility, because you know it wasn't your strength, it was your surrender. That's what moved the atmosphere. Not your intellect, not your experience, but your yielded heart. And because of that, the spiritual climate around your life has changed. The enemy cannot track you the same way anymore. His access has been revoked, and heaven is building a wall. You are protected not because nothing will touch you, but because nothing can destroy you. The angels are not just watching, they're guarding. They're carrying assignments, transporting provision, reinforcing what you agreed with in secret. What's coming into your life is not rando, it's carried by the very ones who stood still in honor of your obedience. Do not let your natural eyes deceive you. You may feel like everything is normal, but the normal has been pierced. The atmosphere is different now. You walk in a field of favor that was fertilized by surrender. You carry an aroma that's not your own. It's the fragrance of obedience. And when you walk into rooms, you'll notice something has changed. Peace will go before you. Disruption will happen around you, not because you're trying to provoke, but because your presence confronts what's not in alignment. That's what obedience does. It gives your spirit permission to disrupt darkness without saying a word. So don't be surprised when things get uncomfortable. It's not rejection, it's resistance. You carry what the enemy fears most: silent authority. And the angels that stood still in that moment, they're still with you now. Not because you're perfect, but because you passed the test. Because you chose obedience. Because you said yes. And heaven has not forgotten. Heaven's clock just struck 555. Comment it now. Chosen one. Whether you felt it or not, something irreversible has already begun. The moment you aligned with obedience, a divine timeline was activated. A prophetic sequence zone, written before you were born, was released into motion. This is not imagination. This is not emotional hype. This is spiritual law at work. You didn't just obey. You fulfilled a time-sensitive assignment. There are some acts of obedience that open doors, but others, they set off a chain reaction that cannot be stopped. And that is exactly what you've stepped into. You've triggered a cascade of events. Alignments. Unlockings that were waiting for your yes. Not just a surface-level yes, but a yes from deep surrender. A yes that echoed across dimensions. And now, you're not waiting on breakthrough. Breakthrough is chasing you. Because heaven doesn't delay when destiny is honored. There are moments that heaven marks with urgency, and this was one of them. Your obedience unlocked timing. Your surrender dismantled delay. The very things that felt like they were dragging for years are now under divine acceleration. And this time, it's not about striving, it's about flow. This sequence isn't powered by your effort. It's being carried by grace. You've done your part. Now, God is doing His. And He's not responding emotionally. He's responding covenantally. The moment you obeyed, you re-entered alignment with the covenant written over your life. The promise that was always meant to manifest but was waiting for the right heart posture to be released. And now it's moving fast. That's why people you haven't spoken to in years are suddenly reaching out. That's why doors you gave up on are reopening. That's why strategies are forming in your mind that you didn't study for. Because when timing meets obedience, supernatural rhythm begins. The Word of God declares in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it linger. Wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." There are some promises that only respond to divine timing, and you, chosen one, have stepped into that timing, not by coincidence, not by luck, but by quiet obedience that shifted the weight of your season. You were faithful when it was hard. You didn't quit when quitting would have made more sense. You didn't cave to comfort. And now, that appointed time has arrived. Things are happening behind the scenes that are beyond your knowledge, but not beyond your obedience. The people you're supposed to meet, they're moving too. The provision you need, it's already en route. The doors, they're being unlocked from the inside. And none of this is random. It's the result of your surrender finally syncing with heaven's schedule. You've stepped into what prophets called a kairos moment. A window in time when heaven and earth overlap. A divine window where one act of obedience can do what years of effort could not. Chosen one. This is that moment. The acceleration may feel unfamiliar. You may even second-guess it. Wonder if it's too fast or too soon. But hear this clearly. You are not ahead of God. You're finally aligned with Him. The delays that marked your past were not punishment. They were preparation. And now that your heart has matured, that your spirit has been tested, that your character has been refined, the release has been triggered. What's coming now is not a trickle, it's a flood, but not one that drowns, one that carries. You're not working for it, you're flowing in it. Don't be surprised when rooms open before you knock. Don't question it when resources appear without striving. Don't shrink back when favor puts your name in places you never submitted a resume for. This is the sequence. This is the speed of surrendered ones. Now, type this in the comments. 555. It's more than a number. It's a prophetic stamp, a mark of divine transition and grace-fueled movement. Type it as an act of faith because something is already in motion. And by speaking it, you're agreeing with heaven's timeline. You're saying, I see it. I receive it. I'm ready for it. You didn't stumble into this moment. You were born for it, designed for it, teamed for it, and the ripple won't stop with you. When you release this number in faith, you're not just sealing your own shift, you're unlocking it for others connected to your obedience. This is bigger than you. It's generational. It's prophetic. And it starts right now. That act was a prophetic key. You didn't know it, but heaven did. What you thought was just a small, quiet moment of surrender was actually a divine unlocking. A key inserted into a door in the spirit realm, a door you didn't even know existed. A door that had been closed for generations. Prophetic keys don't always look like miracles. Sometimes they look like restraint. Sometimes they look like walking away. Sometimes they look like giving what you didn't think you had. The world sees weakness, but heaven sees strategy. And in that moment of obedience, your hand turned something eternal. God has been waiting for someone in your bloodline, in your city, maybe even in your household, to step up and move with clean hands and a surrendered heart. Not for attention, not for applause, just for alignment. You didn't even realize it. But when you said yes, you became the key. There are things in the kingdom that are only opened by surrender, not by talent, not by networking, not by hustle, by surrender. And what you did, though it felt small, though it felt personal, was prophetic. It spoke into atmospheres you'll never see. It disrupted systems, spiritual locks, and generational structures. And most of all, it activated something ancient that was lying dormant. You've likely heard that phrase before: God opens doors no man can shut. But what many forget is this: God uses people to turn those locks. You became the one He used. You became the yes that turned the key. And now, rooms are opening not just for you, but for others connected to your obedience. Because when God gives you a key, it's never just about you. It's about everyone your life touches, everyone your words reach, everyone your presence influences. That's why the enemy fought so hard to distract you, derail you, delay you. He didn't just want to stop your progress, wanted to keep the door locked. But you turned it anyway. You prayed when it would have been easier to complain. You gave when it hurt. You forgave when revenge was justified. And in doing so, you aligned with something prophetic, something timeless. Because every time you choose obedience over reaction, you are operating not just in discipline, but in destiny. Prophetic keys don't glitter. They don't glow. They don't get celebrated. They're often heavy, humble, hidden. But they work. And yours worked. There's movement now in places you can't yet see. Shifts in spiritual atmospheres. Papers being signed in the unseen. Things delayed are now being released. Not because of effort, but because of obedience. Obedience is the master key to divine access. It is written in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. No, that verse isn't a promise for everyone. It's a reward for the faithful, for those who endure, for those who choose God's way when the world offers easier paths. You are one of them. You didn't force the door. You honored it. And now God is swinging it open. Chosen one. This is what prophets prayed for. Not the fame, not the followers, but the opening, the access. The moment when God would find someone willing to be the key. You didn't know you were part of a timeline. You didn't know your obedience was written into a scroll centuries ago. But God knew. And when the moment came, you didn't run, you turned. That act, that seemingly insignificant yeshas, now set off a progression of openings. Doors are opening over your health. Doors are opening over your finances. Doors are opening over your purpose. And doors are opening through you for others. Your testimony will become someone else's strategy. Your journey will light the path for someone stumbling in the dark. You don't need a stage. You carry a key. And the kingdom is moved by those who carry keys more than those who carry microphones. So, walk carefully now. Not in fear, but in reverence. Because the key you turned has unlocked more than a season. It has unlocked a new order. What was once shut by man's failure has now been opened by your obedience. You are not returning to normal. You are walking in fulfillment. And God is not done. There are still more doors. But now you know, every time you obey, you turn another key. Each step forward is not random, it's unlocking legacy, restoring inheritance, and opening realms your bloodline was locked out of. Keep walking. Keep turning keys. This is more than destiny, it's deliverance. Your name was declared in the courts. There are places in the spirit where legal matters are settled, heavenly courts where destinies are debated. Assignments are authorized, and names are spoken with weight. And recently, your name was spoken, not with accusation, not with shame, but with authority, honor, and divine approval. Heaven held session, and you were called by name. Not the name the world gave you, not the labels your past tried to stick on you, but the name written in heaven's book before the foundations of the world, the name only the Father fully knows. And when it was spoken, the atmosphere shifted. The records of your obedience were brought before the throne. The blood of Jesus testified on your behalf. The Spirit confirmed your readiness. And the verdict was spoken: promote them, trust them, release them. You don't remember the moment because it didn't happen in time. It happened in eternity. But you've felt the ripple ever since. That unusual clarity, that peace that didn't make sense, that boldness that rose up out of nowhere, that sudden shift in your circumstances. That is the evidence of a spiritual ruling being executed on earth. When God declares something in his court, no force can override it. Not delay, not confusion, not fear. not even your own doubts. Because heaven's court does not operate on emotion, it operates on truth. And when truth rises, everything else must submit. The enemy had accusations. He pointed to your past. He whispered about your weakness. He brought up your failures, your stumbles, your delays. But the blood spoke louder. The obedience echoed deeper. And your surrender weighed more than your history. You were not just defended, you were honored. And because of that, the court moved in your favor. You've been spiritually promoted, not with earthly signs yet, not with titles or platforms, but with access, weight, and authority. You may not feel different, but the spirit realm sees it. Heaven knows it, and the enemy fears it. That's why the tension has increased. You've been wondering why warfare seems to strike you when you're doing everything right. It's because the court ruling has been released, but now it must be enforced. Just as in earthly courts, even after a judgment is passed, enforcement follows. Heaven's angels are now ensuring what was decided is being carried out. And you are not on trial anymore. You are moving forward under the seal of heaven's approval. It is written in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 33, "Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies." The accusations have lost their power. The voices that tried to hold you back are now silenced. The shame that used to cripple you has no ground left to stand on. Because the court has spoken, God has justified you. And justification is not just forgiveness, it's divine repositioning. Chosen one. You are stepping into territory the enemy hoped you'd never reach. You were meant to break under pressure. You were supposed to fold under the weight. But instead, your obedience placed your name in the mouth of heaven. And that name was followed by instruction. Heaven has issued a decree. Accelerate their steps. Assign new angels. Expand their reach. Multiply their influence. Protect their peace. You are not just moving forward. You're being carried by the authority of what was settled in the spirit. What was withheld is now being released. What was blocked is now being rerouted. What was lost is now being restored, not by striving, but by ruling. You are walking under a verdict of favor, and the enemy can't reverse it. People can't discredit it. Even you can't sabotage it unless you willingly step out of agreement. That's how powerful this moment is. You've been ruled in favor, not because you were perfect, but because you were willing. And in heaven's court, willingness carries more weight than giftedness. So walk like the verdict is final. Pray like your name carries authority. Move like the gates are already opening. Because in the realm that matters most, they already have. You don't need to strive to earn what's already been declared. Your only job now is to stay in agreement. To continue walking in the posture that brought your case before the throne in the first place. Humility, obedience, and trust. You've been heard. You've been cleared. You've been declared. And now, you are being launched. Glory has been assigned to you. Not glory as the world defines it, not applause, not recognition, not a stage. No, this is heaven's glory, the kind that rests on the shoulders of those who endure the fire and come out refined, the kind that doesn't just shine out, transforms. Chosen one. You're not just walking into favor, you're walking under weight. Weight that shifts atmospheres, weight that breaks yokes, weight that was forged in the hidden places of surrender. The crushing you experienced wasn't in vain. It was preparation for the very thing now, resting upon your life, glory. This is what the waiting was for. This is what the warfare was about. This is what the loneliness shaped you for. Heaven has assigned glory to you because you proved you wouldn't take it for yourself. You were trusted with silence, trusted with delay, trusted with the hard yes that others ran from. And now, you're being trusted with glory, not so you can be lifted up, but so Christ can be revealed through you. Because glory is not decoration. Glory is responsibility. The presence you now carry is not ornamental, it's governmental. It will affect the spaces you walk into, the conversations you engage in, the decisions you make. You'll begin to see people open up around you without knowing why. Rooms will grow quiet when you speak, not because of volume, but because of weight. You're not carrying information. You're carrying presence. That presence is the result of a life laid down, and the fruit of that surrender is not just peace, it's power. Power to speak and see shackles fall. Power to pray and see closed doors creak open. Power to walk into darkness and watch it scatter, not because of what you say, but because of who sent you. It is written in the second letter to Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 7. But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. You are that jar of clay, cracked in places, broken in others, but now full. You've been filled with something heaven trusts, not because you proved yourself strong, but because you remained available, because you allowed the crushing, because you kept showing up in the secret place. You didn't chase the spotlight, and that's why you're now carrying what can't be manufactured glory. So what happens next? Everything changes. The way you walk, the way you speak, the way you're received it will shift. Don't be surprised when old rooms feel too small, when old relationships grow quiet, when familiar patterns no longer fit. That's not Prideite's promotion. You're being upgraded, not in status, but in assignment. You're no longer just surviving storms. You're commanding atmospheres. But remember this, glory is not to be hoarded. It's to be poured out. What God is placing on your life is meant to overflow. That's why He's stretching your reach, increasing your influence, expanding your capacity. You are being made into a vessel of His presence, a walking altar, a breathing revival. You don't come out of a moment like this and do nothing. When God breathes on you, you respond. When heaven confirms, the earth must echo. So if this word hit a deep place, respond in spirit and in truth. Mark this moment with a like, not for metrics, but as a memorial. There are places in the Old Testament where altars were built not with stone, but with memory. Let this click be your altar. Comment below, write what's stirring, not for show, but because your testimony is part of someone else's unlocking. Let your words become the next person's confirmation. Share this word like it carries fire, because it does. It's not just another video. It's an assignment. Someone needs what you just received. If this space is becoming oil to your spirit, stay under it. Subscribe, not to follow me, but to remain in rhythm with what heaven is unfolding in this community of the chosen. And if something in you says, "This is my soil," then give as you're led, not pressured, not manipulated, but moved. Give with reverence, not out of obligation, but as an act of worship. Let what you release reflect what you've received. Heaven moved toward you in this message. Move back. Because if you only hear and don't respond, the moment passes. But when you engage, when you act, you seal the atmosphere God created for you. Glory doesn't just fall to make you feel full. It falls to fuel your next step. So, whatever obedience looks like for you, write, share, give, yield to it now. Don't just carry glory. Live like one who's been trusted with it. The fire you felt wasn't emotion. It wasn't adrenaline. It wasn't hype. It wasn't because the music swelled or the lighting shifted. That burning in your chest, that stirring in your spirit, that sudden sense of conviction or clarity, it wasn't emotional chemistry. It was God responding. Fire is heaven's language, and he spoke to you in flame. From the days of Moses at the burning bush to the tongues of fire in Acts. The presence of God has always announced itself with heat, not to destroy, but to awaken. When your spirit was moved, it wasn't to create a feeling, it was to activate your assignment. God doesn't set fire to impress you. He sets fire to send you. That warmth you felt wasn't just encouragement, it was divine recognition. The fire came to show you something had changed, that your atmosphere had shifted, that your spirit was being marked again, and most of all, that your obedience had been received, chosen one. Fire is not for comfort, it is for consecration. And the reason the fire came isn't because you are emotionally vulnerable, it's because you are spiritually available. You created room through surrender, and heaven filled it with flame. You laid down your pride, your need for control, your old identity, and God lit it up, not to harm it, but to consume it, so something greater could rise from it. Just like Elijah's altar on Mount Carmel. When your obedience was laid down, the fire fell, and it was holy. That's why you couldn't shake it off. That's why you kept thinking about that one moment, that one choice, that one act. Because it wasn't just a moment, it was ignition. And from that moment on, you've been carrying a different kind of weight. Not emotional burden, but spiritual heat. And heat always signals transformation. God uses fire to seal what flesh cannot carry. He uses fire to confirm what words cannot say. He uses fire to separate what was from what now is. You're not who you were before the flame touched you. You're not thinking the same. You're not moving the same. Something internal shifted. Something unseen was refined. Scripture says in the book of Zechariah, chapter 13, verse 9, I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. The fire didn't come to punish you. It came to purify you. That burning wasn't judgment. It was invitation. It was God saying, I see you. I know what you laid down. I've come to respond. And his response is never lukewarm. When God moves, he moves with holy flame. He ignites what he intends to transform. So if the fire has lingered, don't fear it. It's not consuming you, it's changing you. You've prayed for clarity, and God sent flame to burn away confusion. You've prayed for confirmation, and he sent heat to separate the fake from the real. You've asked for purpose, and he's using fire to refine your motives so your calling can stand under pressure. You were never meant to live a cold life. You were meant to burn with purpose. That's why you feel different around certain people now. Why you can't go back to the old routine. Why shallow conversations leave you restless. Why compromise now tastes bitter. It's not burnout. It's holy fire doing its work. It's heaven preserving the purity of what it placed inside you. And the fire won't stop until the refining is done. But don't worry, this isn't about perfection. It's about purification. God's not expecting flawlessness. He's refining for function. He's burning off what would make you ineffective later. He's consuming what would crumble under the weight of your next assignment. The fire is your preparation, not your punishment. You'll know the fire is working when your desires begin to shift. When you stop needing the approval of people, when you crave His voice more than validation, when peace becomes more attractive than power, that's the fire. That's the transformation. That's the confirmation that God didn't just visit your atmosphere, He claimed it. So don't run from the heat. Welcome it. You are in the forge of your calling now. What's left after the fire is what will carry the next move of God through you. This isn't emotion. It's encounter. And it's only just beginning. Because where there is fire, there is fuel. And where there is fuel, there is forward motion. The fire was never meant to leave you where it found you. It was meant to launch you. So don't just carry the flame, become the flame that lights revival everywhere you go. You unleashed revival and didn't know it. You didn't shout it from rooftops. You didn't organize an event or gather a crowd. But the moment you obeyed fully, deeply, without looking back, something ancient began to stir. Something holy began to rise. And without even realizing it, you sparked revival. Revival doesn't always begin with microphones or music. Sometimes it begins with a decision no one sees, a private yes, a painful surrender, a breaking that makes space for heaven. That's what happened in you. That's what's happening through you now. Revival is heaven's response to purity, and your obedience made room. You didn't need a building. You became the altar. You didn't need a platform. You became the vessel. The fire that's been refining you wasn't just for your own transformation, it was preparation. Because what God is about to pour through you will reach far beyond you. Revival is personal before it's public. It begins in the secret place, in the quiet choices, in the nights you wrestled but still chose holiness. You thought you were just trying to survive, but heaven saw a remnant rising, a forerunner being forged, a flame being lit where ashes once ruled. And now that flame is spreading everywhere you go. Something shifts. People feel safe around you, but they don't know why. Others begin weeping in your presence, unaware that it's not you. It's the weight of God resting on you. Your words carry healing. Your prayers break resistance, not because you're eloquent, but because you're surrendered. Revival is moving through yielded vessels, not perfect ones, available ones. That's what you are now. You've become a carrier, a temple, a living conduit. You've been anointed for more than a personal breakthrough. You've been chosen to usher in movement, and it's already begun. In your home, in your circle, in your city, even if you can't see it yet. You've been activated. You'll know by the stirring, the hunger that won't go away, the tears that flow without reason, the urgency you feel when others settle. That's the spirit of revival inside you. It's alive, it's awake, and it's looking for open ground to spread. We find in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 28, "And afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. That's not a distant prophecy. That's a now reality. And you're part of it. God isn't looking for the most impressive. He's looking for the most obedient. You didn't chase revival. Revival chased you. Because God found in you what he rarely finds in a generation drowning in noisier, quiet, burning. Yes. And that yes lit a match. It may start small. A conversation that turns into deliverance. A prayer that turns into healing. A text that turns into salvation. Revival doesn't always begin with thunder. Sometimes it's a whisper that echoes across eternity. Your surrender sent out that echo, and you're not done. This isn't your ending, it's your ignition. Every space you walk into is now marked. You don't have to announce it. The spirit realm already knows it. Hell is already aware of what's moving through you. Heaven has already enlarged your territory. You're no longer just responding to revival. You're carrying it. So walk like one who knows what they carry. Love boldly. Forgive quickly. Pray deeply. Speak with fire. Because there are hearts near you that are dry kindling, waiting for someone burning enough to light them. You are that spark. Don't be intimidated by the size of what's ahead. Revival doesn't need your perfection, it needs your consistency. Keep showing up. Keep yielding. Keep burning. And remember, the moment you surrendered, you didn't just change your life. You shifted the spiritual climate of everything around you. This is more than your season. This is your sending. You didn't ask for a movement, but one has begun because heaven knew you would carry it with humility. You aren't building revival with noise, you're building it with depth, with consistency when no one claps, with purity when no one watches. That's why it's sustainable. This isn't wildfire, it's holy fire. It won't burn out when emotions fade. It will deepen, expand, multiply. Your yes was never small. It was catalytic. Generations will eat fruit from the tree you planted in quiet obedience. You thought you were alone, but God was shaping a revivalist. And now, all of heaven is watching you rise. Chosen one. What you've just walked through wasn't just a message. It was a mantle, a confirmation, a divine unfolding of everything. Heaven's been whispering into your spirit. You've seen how one act small, hidden, painful melted God's heart. You've seen how obedience echoed into the unseen, how your yes wasn't isolated, it was generational. You didn't just change direction, you changed spiritual history. So now, don't let this moment end in silence. Like this message as a public amen. Let the click be your altara, place where you mark the moment heaven moved in your spirit. Comment below what stirred you. Even if it's just one word, there's power in declaration. You never know who will read it and find their confirmation in your courage to speak. Share this with someone carrying a quiet burden. Someone whose secret sacrifice may have gone unnoticed by others, but not by God. Let this message become their mirror. And if this space has been a continual stream of clarity, truth, and holy fire, subscribe. Not just to keep watching, but to stay aligned with what heaven is releasing over this remnant. Lastly, if this word has poured into your life, and you feel that holy nudge so where you've been fed, your gift, small or great, help spread messages like this to thousands more. No pressure, just invitation. Obedience always returns a harvest. You are not just passing through a season. You are building something eternal, word by word, step by step, choice by choice. Heaven remembers, hell retreats, and earth, it's about to see what a fully surrendered life can truly unleash. Thank you for walking this journey. You are not alone. You are not small. You are God's chosen. On your rising has only just begun.